The institutional power in this country has shifted rightward. Some days I think it's never going back. Other days I try to gauge how much has shifted. But there's no doubt that places like ABC, CBS, even the New York Times and Washington Post, they are not where they were even a year ago. And whether they're reacting to fear of the right-wing mob, whether they're reacting to their sense of consumers, whether it's the business model where they say we need to appeal to people in the center and the right. I've said this to so many Democrats. If you think of all the reasons Donald Trump won 2 out of 3 elections, if you think of all the reasons people voted for Donald Trump in big numbers, even those who don't like a lot about him, I think the number one reason, literally, might be hostility towards what's been so apparent to tens of millions of Americans, this one-sided point of view in our big media. Take ABC, okay? For years now, every day at 11 o'clock Eastern, The View. Every night, 11:35 Eastern, Kimmel, right? These are 2 shows, a daytime talk show, staple of, television convention, a late night show. Those shows for years have alienated millions of people because they're liberal shows. And in the age of Trump, they're hostile to Trump. And so for tens of millions of Americans, they say, why should ABC's daytime talk show oriented towards women? I don't know what percentage of the viewers of The View are women, but it's a lot. And why should the evening comedy show, why should they be hostile to Donald Trump? What about appealing to people who just want a talk show or people who just want a late night show? Maybe people who don't live on the coasts, maybe people who are not connected to that point of view. Why don't they have a show, right, with that kind of distribution? The clout now has shifted. And Bob Iger, as a CEO, he's my former boss. I have huge respect for him. He's got to navigate this. And whether he's making these decisions because of consumers or the affiliate pressure or regulatory pressure from the FCC and the White House or whatever it is, maybe it's because Kimmel's ratings aren't that great, whatever it is, and even if they bring Kimmel back, the decision to suspend him is a watershed moment because he said something that would have passed unnoticed by most people, except that the head of the FCC brought it up, and then the affiliates were offended by it, and Bob had to act. Bob had to do something. And the context for this is the change that's occurring, okay? We've seen some of it already. Maybe the first big move was when Elon Musk bought X. Okay, X up until that point, like most of the West Coast-based social media, massive social media platforms, were liberal. Their employees were liberal. Mark Zuckerberg liberal, and although conservatives were on Facebook and on Twitter, they were really dominated by liberals, and the ownerships and the employees were liberal. And so when the question was, well, should we suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story? Yeah, because we want to hurt Donald Trump. We want to help Joe Biden. They wouldn't have done that the other way around, right? So now, the first big piece, Musk buys Twitter, calls it X. Now it's controlled by someone who's pro-Trump. Then you have David Ellison buying CBS, okay? Now, we don't know yet how he's going to change CBS and whether he's going to make it conservative or center-right or try to just make it actually balanced. We don't know. But what we do know is now you got a guy whose family is very close to Trump, President Trump, and wants to change the thing, talking about bringing in Barry Weiss, who's not biased, maybe some say center-right, but just not liberally biased, for a big role at CBS News. So that takes Twitter and CBS News and moves them from part of the liberal-dominated firmament of new media, major player in new media, major player in old media, and says, we're not going to be liberally biased anymore, okay? Now, TikTok. President Trump is trying to negotiate a deal, in part for national security reasons, to take TikTok away from the Chinese and give it to some American company or companies to better keep the Chinese from using it to spy on America and have the algorithm maybe not serve as Chi-Com propaganda. And the companies that are said to be in line to help manage and run TikTok are, again, people associated with President Trump. Are they going to turn TikTok into the RNC? No. But is TikTok going to be leaning more to protect conservative voices than it otherwise would? Yes. And now David Ellison's talking about buying CNN to own both CBS and CNN. Same thing. Dan Pfeiffer worked for Barack Obama. He's part of the Pod Save America fellas. He wrote in his Substack today how alarming this is. Did not write with much of a sense of irony. How alarming, he said, that you now have CBS and X in control of Trump allies, and maybe soon coming, TikTok and CNN. Can you imagine one party having to fight out things in the national town square in political elections if big media organizations were controlled by the other side? Can you imagine how painful that would be? Yes, you can, because that's what conservatives have dealt with now for decades. It's an incredible moment, and don't think this stuff's happening by accident. Donald Trump wants to change the balance of power, and there are people around him who I've been talking to report out on this. They don't call themselves suckers, but they do look at the first term and say, man, we left a lot of stuff in place. Media, universities, law firms, corporations. We let a lot of stuff in place where we were fighting with one hand or both hands tied behind our back. And now they're using the leverage they have. I don't love some of this, but if you're just talking about raw power and you're talking about fairness, these Democrats like Dan Pfeiffer, who are concerned that their side is losing control of some of these organizations, they're right to be concerned, but they would do better. They want to have the trust of the public to acknowledge that they benefited from this exact thing overwhelmingly. And for a large part of their monopoly, there was no media. There was no digital media. So when they controlled ABC, CBS, NBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time, and Newsweek, they controlled a lot of stuff. Their power is diminished, but we see with this Kimmel thing, it's not just about news, right? It's also about Hollywood entertainment. It's a big business, right? The jawboning by the head of the FCC, by the president, again, I caution you, it's dangerous. You should not, regardless of your political views, you should not want to live in a country where the government uses its power to intimidate people, to coerce them to take certain views or to pay a cost if they don't take a view the government likes. That's not good. It's not good. It's antithetical to what we think about the First Amendment. Let the private sector have it at. If Jimmy Kimmel is not funny or Jimmy Kimmel is offending people, let the market take care of it. Let the affiliates say, we don't want to distribute that show. Nothing more influences the networks than big affiliate owners who own a lot of stations saying, we don't want that show. We don't like that show. Let the viewers say, let the ratings go down. Kimmel's ratings have gone down. Probably should have thought about canceling the show before this. Respect the audience. Let the audience make the business decisions. Let the market decide. This is an unprecedented moment. I don't know if Kimmel's coming back or not. I don't know if the left, cheered on by Dan Pfeiffer and others, will figure out a way to have the empire strike back and maybe keep control of CNN in the left's hands. But what is going on now? We've seen lots of other examples, but this Kimmel thing is maybe one of the biggest ones. What is going on now is unprecedented. Donald Trump's reelection started this process in a big way, and they're doing things to try to change the environment. And people in Hollywood have noticed. Now, at the Emmys on Sunday, not a single mention of Charlie Kirk. And to the extent they alluded to politics or alluded to the national environment, it was typically liberal. Stephen Colbert got 2 standing ovations, one when he came out and introduced a segment, and then when he won an Emmy. And there's no doubt that people on the left are going to rally around Kimmel. They've rallied around Colbert. And there are important issues there. As I've said, there are First Amendment issues where I think they're in the right. But for a lot of them, it's not about defending the First Amendment from government intrusion. For a lot of them, and I've talked to them last night when the Kimmel thing happened, a lot of them are, we can't let Trump win. Kimmel going means Trump wins, and they don't want that. Kimmel may come back, but the reason I know there's going to be more upheaval, the reason I know that people who run news and entertainment entities are going to face this more, as Bob Iger has, is because of the winds of change. And the fact that you can no longer get away, not ever, but in many cases, with doing things that are offensive to the sensibilities of people who are sick and tired of being offended by the unfairness of it. Charlie Kirk's assassination has given people on the right a sense of determination, a sense of feeling like asking themselves the question, what would Charlie do? What would Charlie do about this situation? And amongst the things Charlie Kirk would do is to say, let's change it. Again, whether you agree with the guy or not, one of the most impressive things about him was he said, everybody says, most prominent example, everybody says the Republican Party is never going to be the party of young people. Young people are always going to be for the liberals. We need to get our votes from middle-aged people, older people. And Charlie said, no, we're not going to accept that. We're going to figure out, our ideas are better, he would say. We're going to figure out how to get our ideas in front of young people, and we're going to change the paradigm. That's what's happening here with this Kimmel thing, which again, I'm not saying it's going to be linear in that direction. But if you had said, before Donald Trump's rise after he lost in 2020, two late night hosts are going to lose their jobs. And in both cases, lower ratings, but also pressure on them because of their orientation to be virulently anti-Trump. In the case of Kimmel, he may survive this, but he's never going to be the same, at least not during the time Donald Trump's in office, because Donald Trump is being relentless. But the other thing that's happened, and again, this is I don't know if you want to call it coincidence or irony, but Kimmel's suspension came over a remark about Charlie Kirk. But it also came because of the pressure from the right over the determination to live up to Charlie's memory. Charlie Kirk's gone now. He's not fighting these fights himself, but his mission, his determination is going to be continued through others, the drive for change. And the ultimate irony of this is Charlie Kirk's capacity to change America in the direction he wanted it to go may be more powerful in his death rather than when he was alive, because the determination, the mantle, the baton has been picked up by so many people who want to make sure that his vision of America is realized. So you're going to see more of this. Whether Kimmel comes back or not, you're going to see more of it. It's an extraordinary moment in American history, at least modern American history, to see all these liberal institutions in Hollywood and in newsrooms all of a sudden look up and say, we've been representing 50% of America. And if we're going to be in business, we ought to think about representing 100. Attention, everybody 64 years or older, this is an important announcement. The Department of Justice recently sued 3 major Medicare brokers for claiming they were unbiased while allegedly pushing people into plans that got them the biggest kickbacks. It's true, so many insurance agents, they can't be trusted, but you can't necessarily rely on government resources either. So what to do? Here's what I recommend. I want to tell you about a group called Chapter. Chapter was started by people who went through this experience personally after their own parents were pushed into the wrong Medicare program by an agent who was more focused on commissions than on good care. Chapter has a very simple mission. They want to give every American the honest, straightforward Medicare advice that they need and that they deserve. And here's what makes them different. They're the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan across the country, not just a handful. That saves their clients an average of $1,100 a year. There's really no reason not to call. It's quick, it's easy, and they can review your options in less than 20 minutes. If you're already in the right plan, they'll tell you that. But if there's a better plan, they'll help you make the switch. This could be the most important call you make this year. Dial pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare to get peace of mind. Again, that's pound 250 and say the words Chapter Medicare.